know, I've never figured out how to do that. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So we want to try that one first for people in the audience?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Testing.
Yeah. Hi, Michelle Theisen. It's nice to meet you. Oh, well, yes, now you get to see me in person and on video. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I think I don't know if he's here in person or if he's on Zoom. He may be on Zoom. That's quite possible. But that's okay. We've got ways.
Hey, Michelle? Michelle? Can you hear me?
All right, I think we are just about ready to start. If y'all want to hear in the room, I'm so glad to see everybody, but let's go ahead and, can everybody hear me first of all? Just barely?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, our audio person is coming up here. He keeps telling me, move it closer to your mouth, move it closer to your mouth. Well, I do say welcome to everybody, and we're going to be working through a little bit of technical probably tonight. Bill Williams, one of our members, has been kind enough to work with Zach and try to get a good system so that it will work better on Zoom, so that everybody can hear everybody else. He's got a mic set up here so that when it comes time for y'all to answer or ask questions, it'll either be picked up by there or we've got this handheld we can get to you. So everybody will be able to hear your comments or questions or anything along those lines. So we will see how it works. And if you're going to make a comment from wherever you're seated, make sure you speak up, okay? One thing everybody needs to be aware of, we do have a raffle. Again, to support the club, and we do have books to draw from. Those will be our prizes tonight. You've got one ticket for $1, or if you want to spend $3, you can get 5 tickets. So make sure you see Phil and get some raffle tickets this evening. But again, thank you for everybody who's come, both in person and on Zoom. And for those who don't know, I'm Michelle Theisen. I'm the current president of the Fort Worth Astronomical Society. And again, we're happy to be back at the UNT campus for our meetings. It gives us a larger room, so you've got more room to space out where you want to space out. And hopefully we will get back to some of our in-person presentations very soon. I'm not sure what Ed has lined up for October. November, everyone remember, is our swap meet. So that meeting will have our business meeting at the beginning, and then it will be time to wheel and deal. So if you've got something you want to trade, something you want to sell, that's the night you can bring it and see if there's anybody who can give it a good new home for you. Okay. And you'll want to bring checkbook and cash also, because there may be some things you want to get. You can always find some good bargains. We have had some members who've joined this past month. Let me go ahead and recognize those. I don't know how many may be here. The David Wong family. Anybody here from there? Brandon Hamill has joined us. Oh, there you are. Hi, Brandon. He is, for those of you who remember, he is our traveling astronomer, and he did a presentation for us this past spring and had previously presented for us 5 years ago. So we're happy to have him. He's just recently moved to the area from Minnesota. And so it's great to have you, Brandon. We have the Matthew Nguyen, and I believe I met Matthew at the star party the other day. I don't see you this evening. There is the Wade, I think it's pronounced Prunty family. Oh, Prunty, okay. Wade Prunty and family. Gary Watkins and that family. You here? Okay. Okay. Hi. And then the family of Eli Roach. Are you here tonight? Maybe on Zoom? Okay. Anyway, those are our new members over the past month, so we're very happy to welcome them. We do have board members who help to get the club organized and get decisions made. Again, I'm your president. John Geromini is over here in the meeting. He's our treasurer. Zach Smith, he'll be here a little bit later. He is our secretary. And then we have 4 general board members who also help. You have Tom Roth, and he's not here this evening. Cy Simonson, yay. John Baker, oh, I don't see him. And then Phil up here at the front to get you your raffle tickets. Okay, a little bit of history for the club, especially again for those of you who are new. The Fort Worth Astronomical Society is one of the first adult amateur astronomy clubs in the United States. And it was founded by Charlie Mary Noble back in 1949, 72 years ago. And it actually grew out of a junior astronomy club where the parents were having so much fun, they wanted to form their own club as adults. And that is how our Fort Worth Astronomical Society was born. Currently, we have maybe 153 members and their families. So we are growing, and we are happy to have everybody. We do invite everybody to participate. We have members who have all sorts of interests. We have some who just like to go out to the dark sky sites and look at constellations and look through other people's telescopes. We have some who like to do binocular viewing. We have some who do just visual viewing. That's what I do, is I just take my telescope out and I like to look at stuff. We have a good group of amateur photographers who do astronomical photography, and they do some incredible work. So we have all those different people in our club. So if there's something you're interested in, there's somebody who can help you get started in that. Okay. Something to remember is that our club is a nonprofit organization. So if you've got some extra money laying around, we'd be more than happy to add it to our checking account, and you can claim that as a tax donation. Okay. Let's move to outreach. We did have our Tandy Hill Star Party the other day, and I believe our next one is scheduled for Saturday, October the 16th. Pam Klopfer here in our meeting room, she is the one who organizes it. Do you have anything you want to share with us?
I'll just say that our last star party that we had was very good. We had maybe 60 people come food, and we had 8 club members. Very nice, Costco, and then we had other club members that just came out. Some were members, and that was nice to see them. We had nice weather, we had terrible sky. They were, full of smoke. All of that, so we had a good outreach. That I'm done.
For those of you, I know we have the wonderful mic up here. Pam was talking to everybody else in the room. And even though she was loud, we want to make sure, I believe she said we had about 60 people out there. How many scopes again? 8 scopes from club members. And I know there were 2 or 3 of us who were out there just to visit with people. And so it was really a good evening to be out there and enjoy people. And we have some people who come out there, they're out there to watch the sunset. And we're set up, so they just come over and look at our stuff. And we had Jupiter, and I think we had Saturn the other night. So it was really a good evening to meet with people. Next star party we have coming up, I think, is Dinosaur Valley State Park, and that one is scheduled for October the 2nd. Patrick? Patrick. Do you want to talk through this microphone so people can hear you if you want to share anything?
All right, so you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, so our next few star parties we got coming up, actually got one for Cub Scout group on Cleburne State Park on the 1st. And as Michelle said, we got Dinosaur Valley on the 2nd. And then another one after that down in Crowley, the library for a Moonwatch party. And again, all these I'll put on the e-group, so just keep an eye out for that.
Thank you, Patrick. And it's good to know that we've got more and more people who are calling in or emailing in wanting to have group star parties. So people are starting to get active again and getting back into life. New members especially, you're going to want to know about our dark sky sites. We have 2 that are available to our club members. One is up in Decatur, and it's the Thompson Foundation. They are gracious enough to allow us to come and use their property. They have added concrete pads for us. They really take care of us out there. Electricity is available out there. There is a restroom available. And if you need the access code to the gate, you find that on the e-group, the iOS files. And that's where you'll find the access code. The second location is Star Ranch. It is out in Ranger, Texas. And electricity is provided via solar panels. The people who run computers who've been out there have said that they do have enough electricity to get through the night. So you've got electricity out there for that. There is a toilet available. It is a composting toilet. It's working great. So it's just a nice little way to convenience for us. Water is not available at that site. There is a fire extinguisher in the shed, the larger shed. But since there is no water, you please be careful if you're a smoker. Please be careful not to throw your cigarette butts down in the ground. If you go out and stay overnight, be very careful about any cooking that you do, either propane. Please don't start a fire on the ground. We do not want to be those people who are responsible for the wildfire that goes through half of Texas. Again, the access code can be found on the e-group in the iOS group. If you are a new member, we do ask that you do not go out to one of the sites without checking in with one of the members. If you'll put word out on the e-group, people who are going out to Thompson or Star will usually post they're going out there and what day they're going. And you can chime in and say, I'm a new member. Can I meet you somewhere? And they'll usually hook up with you and take you out there and sort of run you through the ropes, show you where the restrooms are, show you where to sign in on the logbooks, show you how to use all the facilities out there. That's really important, especially for the Thompson Foundation, since that is land, again, that we are very graciously allowed to use at no cost. But we need to make sure that the members aren't asking, some poor person from Thompson Foundation who may or may not know what's going on out there, to try to give them all the introductory stuff. We prefer to do that ourselves. At both of those locations, there are telescopes that you can use if you don't have your own. And so you can use those telescopes to do some viewing. And so that's available at both sites. There have been, Cy has a question or some comment.
A comment on that. Also, within the next month, we'll have an inventory of what telescopes are each.
Okay. For those of you who may not have heard, he's going to be finalizing our inventory of what is at each of the sites, so you know what's there. There have been some questions about the number limits at Thompson. At the moment, they are still restricting a total number of 12 at one time at Thompson's. So keep that in mind. If you put word out on the e-group you're going, just sort of keep track. And once that number hits 12, move over to Star or go another night. Okay. Let's see. New members, we've already talked about pairing up with someone to get out to one of the new sites. And then for the new members, when you sign up for the e-group, because we tried to limit the number of people who are on there so that we, not trying to figure out which 5 email addresses go to this account. If you'll create like a general Gmail account or a Yahoo account that everyone from your family can log into and see the messages, then that way we don't have to have 5 different emails and try to figure out who's with what email. And that sort of helps us control the numbers of people in the group. The reason for that is those who are not members of the club, and every year when it comes time for membership, there are going to be some people who've either moved away or their life circumstances have changed, and so they're not going to be able to renew at that time. And we need to make sure those people get called out of the e-group, because there is sometimes information that we need to keep amongst ourselves. And that's just easier when you're not trying to find 5 emails for one membership. Oh, I was told at the Star Party that I needed to advertise. I was told that I needed to advertise. You were the one who told me I needed to advertise. So I took my shirt and I changed at work. This is a shirt with the FWAS logo, and it's got the website on the back. This type of wear can be found at a club or an email address called Cafe Express or Cafe Press. The other is a restaurant. I checked, it is not currently on the iOS group, but there is, I'll put it out in an email tomorrow on the group. It's www.cafepress.com. And then if you do a / and go Fort Worth Astro, it will take you to all of the Fort Worth Astronomical Society stuff, the shirts, the cups, the hats, the jackets. There's a bunch of stuff that you can get that has the FWAS logo or FWAS and information on it. So anyway, we'll put that out so you can go check that out. And I like to wear this to Star parties. I even try to wear it sometimes when I'm going out to Star, because if I'm stopping in a restaurant or something, it just does a little bit of extra advertising for our club. And at this point, I think we're ready for our presentation. Ed Gill is on Zoom. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm here.
Is our presentation via Zoom tonight?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I know that your speaker has at least one fan who is here in the room. So they're going to probably have some questions, and they may want to see if he's got a local presentation at some point that he can get to. So I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. All right. A little background on Professor Ferris. He is one of the best known and most honored science writers. He's an author of 12 books on astronomy, physics, history of science, among the bestsellers, The Whole Shebang, State of the Universe Report, and Coming of Age in the Milky Way. He's been nominated for a National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize. He has taught 5 disciplines at 4 universities, and he is a professor emeritus at the University of California, Berkeley. Professor Ferris has also written and narrated 3 television specials, Creation of the Universe, Life Beyond Earth, and Seeing in the Dark. He also produced the Voyager phonograph record, and that's aboard the Voyager now Interstellar spacecraft. And he was among the journalists selected as candidates to fly aboard the space shuttle in 1986, and has served on various NASA commissions studying the long-term goals of science, exploration, and the potential hazards posed by near-Earth asteroids.
Say,
Now,
Ed, sorry, Ed.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get your screen to be full screen, and I'm not sure exactly how to do that.
If you can hear me, I'm just a talking head right now. So.
Oh, okay.
The presentation, we submitted questions to Professor Ferris ahead of time, and I'm not sure how he wants to address or going to put together his presentation, but when he starts speaking, I think you need to flip over to the speaker mode on the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Timothy Ferris. Mr. Ferris?
Thank you, Ed. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Good. As Ed mentioned, I have some compendium of questions here that Chris Ashford was kind enough to send, and I thought what I would do is to try to quickly get through some of these and then see if you have more things you want to talk about as well. They're good questions, and the reason I like to do it this way is that I'm getting to be an old guy who's out of touch, and I don't really know what's necessarily on your minds, and I would like to congratulate you on the good work you're doing there to popularize astronomy, which after all is just a question of just a means of our sensitizing ourselves to nature on the larger scales. So let me jump right in, because these are good questions. And the first was about Rocky Hill Observatory, from which I'm speaking to you. It was founded in 1993. And there's some good stories about the observatory, but I think I'm going to skip over it because they appear in a book called Seeing in the Dark, which is a book about science, about amateur astronomy. And if you like, we can return to that. It does ask about what equipment I'm using here. The equipment very quickly is an 18-inch f5 Newtonian, TeleVue 127 IS, a CCD camera, a DSLR or two, and I have been doing astrophotography since the 1950s on some rather unusual pathways, because you guys are really good at taking gorgeous pictures of things. And here we only have a seeing of about 2 to 3 seconds of arc, and that means that it's good for big fuzzies, but not for planetary imaging. I'm trying to put together something with images, but I don't know quite what's going to happen with it. And I might say in creative work generally, there's nothing wrong with failing at things. You don't want to fail at a lot of things, but if you don't fail at a few things, you're probably not trying hard enough. So we'll see how all that goes. The second was about staying abreast of discovery. What sources do you use? And if I were to make a successor to my first film, The Creation of the Universe, how would I change it? And of course, a lot has happened since then. From a filmmaker standpoint, though, which I know isn't what you mean here, it's been a tremendous few decades, because it's now possible to do really beautiful things in documentary films at affordable prices. When we made The Creation of the Universe, we had a budget of about $1.3 million, which is a lot for a doc back then. And a third of it went for special effects, and those special effects probably add up to, I forget the number, less than 6 minutes in a 90-minute show. Nowadays, that's a lot easier on the film makers. I'm happy to say that film remains accurate, but of course there are huge things, including dark energy and dark matter, that we would want to include in a more modern version. As to what sources I use, I think I'll skip on from that because they're what you might imagine. I read Sky and Telescope, Scientific American, Science Magazine, Nature Magazine, and technical papers. If you're really interested in the subject, do read the technical papers themselves, because they are really, I think, more interesting and certainly more reliable than reports on them. Not that the reports are incompetent, but there's always a filter there when you're reading someone's account or something. And my books are mostly based on reading original journal material, and it's really important to. I just tell my writing students that you need to know about 10 times as much as you're going to write. You might get away with 6 or 8 times, but if you only know 1 or 2 times what you're writing, the writing isn't going to work. Another thing was I also used to tell them if you run into a difficulty with a paragraph or a sentence that you just keep reworking and you can't seem to get it right, ask yourself whether it's true. Is what you're trying to say true? A lot of times what the style is telling you is that this is bullshit. Don't write this. So it's not always a matter of style. The Voyager Golden Record and the Fermi paradox. Creation of the Golden Record indicates our belief that there must be sentient life out there. And if so, why haven't we seen evidence of it? This comes up a lot, and let me just say a few things. The Fermi paradox is not really a paradox. In the liner notes for the commercial release of the Voyager record, which only occurred about 3 years ago, all those decades, the record was never properly released until quite recently. And in those notes, which an edited form of which appears online at the newyorker.com, I discussed this issue. The reason there's no Fermi paradox is time. And you always want to keep time in mind when you talk about the prospect of intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. We could have been visited 100 times for a year each time by vast squadrons of alien spacecraft who investigated the planet and then went on their way. The odds that any of those visits would have occurred during the time that Homo sapiens existed and had even a spoken language to make some kind of record of it are vanishing small. So the Fermi paradox is based on ignoring time, pretending that everything must be happening right now. So how come they're not here? The Voyager record was not based on the belief that there must be aliens out there. It was based on the possibility that there will be, or have been in the past. And one idea of mine that I might plug here, because it was published back in the 70s in Harper's Magazine rather than in a scientific journal. And it was way pre-internet, so it was hard to explain what I was saying in it, but it postulates a galactic internet. And what I mean by this is, if intelligence is common enough that there have been epochs in the history of our galaxy when any significant number of intelligent civilizations have existed, and some of them have been in touch with one another, then what you would want to do is to facilitate communication by networking it, and you would want that network to remember everything the way the internet does. That's easy to understand now. It wasn't so easy to do in the 1970s. So if we make contact with extraterrestrials, it may well be an acquisition node of a galactic internet, which has the advantage of lasting forever. It's a self-maintaining system. It acquires new worlds, and it does what encyclopedias do, which is to retain a record of civilizations in the past. Things like the Voyagers, things that they wanted to make available to other civilizations, either in their time or in the future. If we were connected to an intergalactic network, I think we'd probably put a lot of things on it, and we surely would be reading it very carefully, the way that the founders of the first European universities read the work of Plato and Aristotle. Let's see. asked a bit about science fiction. I read a lot of science fiction in my early teens, and particularly Robert Heinlein has always been a favorite. What shows or books do I enjoy the most? In terms of movies, I just would mention Interstellar because a lot of people have had opinions about Interstellar. I would just point out it is the only feature that has ever expressed concepts of contemporary advanced physics in an accurate way. And if you see things on the web that say it's not accurate, I would look at that more closely. Kip Thorne's book on the film is quite worth reading. I'm asked here about sustaining our civilization. Behind this is this issue we have, you know, that the origin of science has, I think, not been well understood as yet. For one thing, it's new. We're about as far from the beginnings of science now, 300 to 400 years, call it 400. It's roughly the same period of time as when the books of the New Testament were written relative to the life of Jesus. So I often think about those books as having been written about something important that happened a while ago. And science is not, it's just a few centuries old. So the way people think, belief-based, opinion-based, wanting human heroes, deeply invested in things like defense and how you find food. These are important cultural aspects, but they don't have a lot of room for science. And we have a lot of intuitive reaction against science that doesn't have anything to do with the content of science, about which the objectors know almost nothing, based on a sense that it's simply that it's new. It's like a biological organism rejecting something that it doesn't recognize. And the actual origin of science, I should say, the reason it's not well understood is because it was not an intellectual process. And our history, our Western history, is an intellectual history. To be a historian in Europe has meant you read all the relevant books as a student, grad student and all, and you keep reading all your life, as any good scholar does, and then you try to assemble from the writing of these great thinkers new ideas. Science didn't come about it like that at all. There wasn't, with the exception of, well, I won't even go through the exceptions, with a very few exceptions, philosophers didn't understand science either. What made science was that technology reached the point that it became possible to build or buy an apparatus, a technological apparatus that would provide a meaningful answer to a properly posed experimental question. Science is based on experiment, not on thinking. It only works because of experiment. And the liberal democracies work because they are based on science. That synthesis was created by John Locke and was put into the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution by a close reader of John Locke, Thomas Jefferson, and others. So anyhow, not to get too far afield, but we're now faced and have been faced all along with a disparity between an exponentially improving technological world capable of things that would have seemed like magic a few centuries ago, and a population, even in the most advanced liberal democracies, most of whom do not even understand how science works, much less what to think about scientific issues. So when the first genetic engineering experiments were going on at Harvard, the people of Harvard objected and got the research stopped for a while because, as they put it, we don't know what might crawl out of that lab. There's a strange fixation on the idea that the current pandemic began in a lab. It's possible, but it's not terribly likely. There's just a lot of fear that surrounds the workings of science because people understand that it's powerful and that it's doing things that are beyond their ken. The job of science writers is to try to take those concepts and those experiments and make them understandable to this general public. Now, the question asked you, did you have any success at this? And it's a good question. It's very hard to tell about things like that. When you make a film and you put it on TV, you sometimes can get you get certain quantitative information back, how many people saw it and everything, and you get some reactions. Now with social media, you can get a lot more. But it's actually hard to know, and this is true of teaching too, what your long-term impact is. So I'm always appreciative when occasionally I'll get a letter from someone who says, oh, you know, I saw a film of yours when I was 16, and then that's why I became a scientist. I had one letter from a guy who said something similar, but he said, in the end, I didn't become a scientist. I became a Hollywood screenwriter. But I have a 12-foot shelf of science books, thanks to reading this one book of yours that got me into it. Those are very gratifying. Quantitatively, hard to tell. There's a lot about this in my book, The Science of Liberty. And as long as I'm plugging things, let me add one other thing, that during the pandemic here at the observatory, I've been doing a series of lectures called the Rocky Hill Lectures. The first 12 of those have been released, and they're on YouTube, and that many of them address questions like this. Are we heading for destruction, as so many civilizations have in the past? Yeah, maybe, but, and you know, the question of which time frame and all, but you want to be careful about taking the so-called lessons of the past, because a whole lot's different now. The past did not have science. The past did not have democracy. The Greeks had something they called democracy, but it was not a liberal democracy. All the rich nations of the world today, the US, all Western Europe, most of South America, Canada, India, 45% almost of all humans now live in liberal democracies. This is a brand new form of government. There are no historical analogs for it. It's much more peaceful than the forms of government that preceded it. And the liberal democracies make technological choices that are often confusing or alarming to the general population. So it is an unstable situation, but doesn't guarantee anything. You know, we know Rome fell, for instance, as a civilization fell, but the civilization was Italy, and that civilization is still there. Rome's still there. What fell was Roman control over the wider world, as you know. And that happened, by the way, right after Rome adopted a state religion. So that is one lesson I would pass on. If I were living in a liberal democracy that adopted an official state religion, I'd think about moving to another democracy. Okay, that's the questions I have in the original letter, and then there are some here from the members. Let me pause a moment to ask. Is this okay? Any questions at this point? Is this the sort of thing you'd like to be hearing?
Yes, thank you, Tim.
Okay.
Good answers to my questions. I'll let other people have some questions though. So.
Okay, and I'll stop for questions at the end, and I'll probably talk only about another 10 minutes and then see if there's any questions. Wanted to see how this is. Would you share any favorite memories of your experience as an observer? Most of them are in seeing in the dark. I grew up in Key Biscayne, Florida, and you could see, particularly at night, launches of rockets from the Cape. They skirted the coast. They would come right down the coastline of Key Biscayne because they wanted to steer over water. But many of the orbital patterns, you wanted to get a little more polar, so they would kind of turn around the Keys. So you could see them come right over. It was pretty great. And we used to go up on the roof of the house. I had an astronomy club there, the Key Biscayne Astronomical Society. And we used to get up on the roof and watch for these rocket launches, which in those days were much delayed, but so we bring a telescope up and observe from there. It's just been great being out under the night sky for so many years. It's just there's something about it that is very appealing, but I don't have to tell you all about that. How did I get into writing about astronomy? I was interested in astronomy from age 12. At the time, we were living in rural Florida up north of Key Biscayne. Sky is very dark. Key Biscayne skies were good too, though. Not much light pollution by today's standards, and excellent seeing, which is still true down there. Very steady air. And there wasn't much around. We had a little branch library and a band school. But at night you could see all these things. So I started taking books out of the library and reading about them. And that gave me a kind of intellectual debt to these writers, British and American writers, who I could perceive were grown men who knew a lot of stuff, but made the effort to explain it in a way that a 12-year-old could understand. That I always felt that I owed them a debt. I managed to get a little telescope, 1.6-inch telescope, start looking at planets. And we moved to the Key in, I think, 1956. And there I was, I mowed lawns for a year to get a 2.4-inch Unitron. That was a big improvement. Had telescopes ever since. Let's see, any writing heroes or inspiring books? I just want to mention one, the two works of David Deutsch. The most important books in the latter 20th century, in my opinion, are these two volumes by David Deutsch. I forget what he calls them. I think The End of Infinity is one or something like that. But, there are also now videos of David out of Oxford. Some of those are quite interesting too. This is extremely theoretical. It's not even physics, it's information theory really, but in terms of just, you know, you want to leap ahead a generation, those are the two books I would recommend. How has amateur astronomy changed over your life? Well, there's a lot about that in the book, and obviously it's just been a tremendous period. You know, what digital technology is doing to the field is, in particular, is just remarkable. Would I care to speculate on the future of amateur astronomy? No, I don't think it would be of any use, because I probably wouldn't be right. If 30 years ago, I would not have predicted that you could carry a telescope on your shoulder out in the backyard and polar alignment, align it, and take photos of galaxies that were better than Palomar. That's what Mr. Gendler did in suburban Connecticut. I put that in film, Seeing in the Dark, because it really is just startling how things changed. So I don't know how that'll happen in the future. The world is integrating, and that's quite interesting, digitally integrating. You know, we're all familiar with the downside of that. The idiotic untruths that used to be the province of a dozen cranks, some scattered across thousands of miles, are now actual forces on the internet. I'm just now compiling for one of the Rocky Hill lectures a list of like 8 or 10 statements that I can be pretty sure some listeners will think some of the statements are false and some of them are true. And the ones that they think are true, they'll fight for that, and they're all false. So that's a downside. But on the upper side, we have an integration of intelligence and information, and a doubling time for the total amount of knowledge in the world that's now being measured in months. It used to be measured in centuries. Let me quickly finish up here. Carl Sagan talked about this problem of science and technology and the public. And I will say that one response to how do you run a country with so much science and technology and the NSF and all this money being spent, when your people don't understand, most of them, how any of it works, is, well, one thing you do is you have a republic, not a direct democracy. I myself, I study things like strategic nuclear arms, been doing so for decades. I would not want to vote directly on some strategic arms bill. I don't have the time to read those bills. So it's not necessarily quite as stark as it may seem. The two parties are at opposite ends of the spectrum. Well, part of them are opposite ends. Part of the two parties still overlap. But that is the main reason I did the Rocky Hill lectures, is to try to, because the algorithm on YouTube has gotten so good. So if someone, let's say, you know, somebody like I was at 12 or 14 or 16, if you're trying to get something straight, YouTube has suddenly become, through machine learning, like always without anybody knowing how it did it, a really good tool for that. Within a few steps, you should be able to find something really useful. That's the main reason for doing those lectures. What project have you undertaken that brought you the greatest personal satisfaction? You know, it's hard to say the books, the films, the golden record. Creative work doesn't have much to do with your own satisfaction, because I don't think you ever really know what's happening. John Locke had no way of knowing. He got things really clear. How you build a liberal democracy, a public education, all the basics. But if you told John Locke, or the most optimistic friend of John Locke alive in the 17th century, that more than a third of the world would now be governed by his discoveries, that was by far the most prosperous and popular part of the world, a place where people who live there like it, and other people want to say they would like to live to be in those countries too, or have their country be similar. No one could anticipate that, and no one did. There used to be societies that would meet in the 1700s in London coffee shops, because there was the big thing, you know, newspapers and coffee changed the world. You go in the morning, you'd have coffee, you'd read the paper, you'd start talking about what was in the paper. Those coffee shops were made illegal in every venue where they appeared, from Turkey to England. King of England said you can't do this. But prohibitions don't work. One of the great political discoveries. You can prohibit anything you want. If people want to do it, they'll do it anyway. So coffee shops won out. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like to talk about anything further, please say so.
Well, thank you very much. Go ahead. If we've got some questions, you want to submit them on chat, or just pass the microphone and unmute, and we'll go from there. Michelle, if you've got it from the conference room, why don't you go ahead and see if we raise hands and pass the microphone.
Yeah, he's getting the microphone right now.
Hello, Professor, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Oh, very good. Well, first of all, I have two of your books that I brought for you to sign tonight,
Sorry about that.
including, you probably can't see it, but from 1988, Galaxies, which
Yes.
is a coffee table book given to me by a friend of mine who is in Italy hiking. And I told him that I was going to see you and have you sign it tonight along with him. So that ended that idea. So
Yes.
along with the question that I had submitted there, I was interested in your observations of Starlink and what's going on with that, with Elon Musk and all of that. That's, I think, to a lot of astronomers, amateur and professional, very concerning.
Yes, I understand. I've seen a Starlink deployment from here at the observatory some weeks ago, and there's another one I think coming up. And my understanding, I'm not an expert on it, but I'll just tell you a few things I do understand. They made a mistake with the initial batch of these little CubeSats. They should have painted black, and that was alarming. And they have changed that. Once the system is in place, I think my impression is that the damage, the interference to astronomers is likely to be minimal or manageable, but I don't know that to be a fact. And Musk, it's interesting that people are starting to notice Elon's career. He has cut the cost per pound to orbit by a third already. Thus bringing to their knees two of our biggest aerospace contractors, and I think they've gotten a little bit fat and sassy. And I do recommend taking a look at his Mars plans, because he's not kidding. This isn't some indulgence. Everything he's done post PayPal has been aimed at going to Mars, and it's interesting to see what unfettered planning at a high level outside the government looks like. And I find it intellectually interesting. And that's as much as I know about that subject.
Yeah, Dr. Ferris, hi, this is Brandon Hamill. I really enjoyed your presentation. And
Brandon.
yeah, hi there. Hey, thanks for sending me a note about your Rocky Hill lectures. I've enjoyed those as well.
Sure.
I appreciate that. Dr. Ferris, so here's my question for you. So Seeing in the Dark is my all-time favorite astronomy book. And yeah, I'll stand up here because it's a dark room. Yeah, we have a dark room because it allows us to see the screen for you. My question is about Seeing in the Dark. If you were to remake that today, are there certain aspects of our wonderful hobby that you would highlight that you didn't highlight? And the second part of that, in Seeing in the Dark, I believe was your son that portrayed you. Did he pursue music, or what sorts of career path did your son pursue? Those are my two questions.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. The film would be, the film was right just at the beginning of this, and it was, I made it then because HD had just come in. It was the first time it was possible to make a 1080p documentary, and I believe that was the first one that aired on American television, certainly on PBS. There were a lot of technical issues with what I wanted to try to do was to approximate what it's like to be out there at night and why it's so appealing. And we were actually able to do that, which you couldn't have done before technically on a television screen. So that was a lot of the burden of it was that. And thank you for asking about Patrick. Patrick fronts an American band, a Los Angeles rock band called The Americans. They completed their second album last March, and you know what happened then. I mean, a year ago, March, right as the pandemic came on, and you can't tour without, you tour behind a new album, and the album's been shelved until you can tour again. So it's kind of almost like a catch-22. But yes, the Americans are they're doing as well as people can do. I went to see a show here in Sonoma County by Boz Scaggs on Saturday night. It's the first time I've been in a concert in a while, like so many of us. It was just delightful. It was a wonderful show. I hadn't known Boz's music that well, so I'm really looking forward to getting everybody getting back into the world of music performance. I'm one of the many people for whom music and astronomy have always been intertwined, or two major interests. Something like so. Who else?
My name is Danny Arthur, Professor Ferris. And
yes,
the question I'd like to ask you is, how many total solar eclipses have you seen? And would you tell us about your favorite? And perhaps also your favorite night under the stars?
Thank you. Can't say I have a favorite. I think the first solar eclipse I saw was I was living in New York, and I drove down with a friend of mine and his bride to North Carolina, where the path of totality was. And I remember that as we arrived, suddenly, when you come into the path of totality, there was suddenly all this gear out in these farmland. It was as if you'd drawn a white line across the actual Earth. All these telescopes and cameras, even back then. And we set ours up in the driveway of an elderly couple of farmers. They'd been on that farm for 4 generations. They were devout Christians, and they would not come out and look at it through the telescope or participate in any way. They were frightened of it. They've been told not to look at it. They didn't even look at it on television. And they're very nice, though. And we talked about their farm before and after the eclipse. And they invited us in for lunch afterwards. And it was very simple farmhouse and a simple lunch of sandwiches. And we said grace and had this sandwich. We were getting to know each other a little bit and talking at the table after we'd eaten. And they asked about, is the eclipse over? I think they meant, is it safe to go outside? And I made a terrible mistake. I've always been sorry I did this. I just didn't stop and think, because the sun was shining through the window behind me onto the table. And so I made a pinhole with my finger to check, and I looked and it projected an image of the crescent sun so that they could see where we were in the eclipse. The sun would keep growing. And that absolutely terrified them. They felt that it was sorcery. They're very polite about it, but we got out of there immediately because they felt that outside was sorcery, and they had been, through their kindness, they had let sorcery in. Since then, I've seen a solar eclipse or two. The most recently, the one recently up in Oregon is where I went. Quite a beautiful experience, and I made a video of that just by putting a Nikon on a low tripod, a wide-angle lens, and full auto, because it covered quite a wide range of changing light, and it did just a beautiful job with it. I don't know that video is online at present. It wasn't at one point, but they are, they're awe-inspiring. They bring up an atavistic sense of fear. Annie Lamont wrote a good piece, I think it was Annie, about solar eclipses. I don't have favorites exactly, but I go out of my way to see them and hope to see the next one, whether it's there in Texas or further north. A little early to plan at this point for me, although I know some of you guys do plan that. Any other questions? Yes. I see a waving hand.
And before I say the question, what an honor and privilege for us to have you here tonight. I couldn't believe it when I heard you were going to address our little club.
Very kind of you to say.
The solar eclipse made me think, and I wonder if you know him, my astronomy professor, who was a great, deep personal friend of mine, was Dr. Fred Trinkline, who was also a solar eclipse traveling expert and led many trips, but he wrote the most widely used astronomy textbook at the college level or high school level, Hufflin Mifflin, and also the physics textbook at the college level for them, and it was the most widely used. But he was a wonderful, fun, interesting guy, and you remind me of him. His lectures were never to be missed, and so I wonder if you knew him or knew of him.
I didn't, although I do read a bunch of textbooks over the years, and any subject, I would say first principle, if you want to learn a new subject, is read at least 2 books on it right off the bat, because it'll give you at least a certain amount of stereo vision into the subject. And I read a bunch of textbooks, and I may well have read his, but that's been a while. The teaching is not a performing art, and even though you're performing for your students, and you might get applause occasionally. Carl's lectures used to get applause once he was on the Johnny Carson show. But the fact is, you'll never know what you meant to people. And that's kind of true for everybody, but you learn it a little more clearly when you're doing things like writing books or making films where you'll never really get a sense of your audience. And when you do have a sense of it, it's usually too frightening to pursue. Playwrights, can go and sit opening night, and none of them does that. None of the good ones, because it's just too scary to actually see how the audience is reacting. You're saying, that's funny, why didn't you laugh? That's not funny, why did you laugh? It just drives you crazy. So I'm a fan of these professions where you don't know your feedback, really, like writing textbooks. Students themselves won't know. Even a student might thank you one day, but it's impossible really to go back and understand one's own intellectual history and to what you might attribute the building blocks of it. I think we have time for maybe one more. I see the cameras searching the auditorium. Anyone? No, I don't think there. Anyone online?
No, I haven't seen anything come through. Unfortunately, there's often a delay, but because we're on YouTube also.
But we do have, I think we have one last question here. Let's see here.
Yes, I was just curious. The James Webb Space Telescope is supposed to finally be launching here soon. And I was
Yes.
wondering what your expectation is as far as the data that comes back, or what you're most looking forward to learning from that.
Yeah, it's a great telescope. It's infrared, so you get into the high redshift domain where we haven't really had much opportunity before. It has to work. It's out at a Lagrangian point, so you can't service it with humans. And I'm a little worried about all that origami business. And the project's been much delayed. There's a tendency to misunderstand these delays. Congress funds a project like a big telescope, and the initial funding has ongoing, it says we're going to get this much a year and it'll ramp up in these years and everything. And Congress can change that at any time. And often sometimes these projects do get late because they didn't have the right administrator, and somebody who was a brilliant scientist and not on a team. Sometimes it's their own fault. But a lot of times it's just because Congress keeps messing with the budgets and moving the projects down. I say, we want you to keep this one low burner for now, and we'll high burn it 2 years later than we thought we would. They have their reasons. People get frustrated about this, and I know we all like to see the big telescopes come online. We have 2 gigantic telescope projects in the US that's on the ground, currently competing, one out of the East Coast, the other from Berkeley and Caltech, an alliance that built Keck. Of the 2, I think the Berkeley Caltech one might win, but I'm not biased about that. But that's probably one too many. This country probably isn't going to build 2 telescopes that size. So you get into issues like that. The thing I would say about not being frustrated is, and you see this with military spending too, there's a widespread myth that we spend vastly too much on military. DoD spending over GDP, which is the right way to measure it, is half today what it was during the Cold War, and that's around where it should be. We've had 70 years of world peace, and to me, that's worth buying. And people get frustrated because they say there's waste. Sure, there's waste, and there's the same thing true. You're building a telescope, and how come these companies they can be delayed and they keep getting the money? It is frustrating, but the main reason they get delayed is because Congress delays it. The United States learned a lesson after the 2 world wars, which was that you can't turn tech on and off. If you want to be at top of the world in tech, you've got to keep these institutions in business. So it doesn't really matter if it takes a few years longer to build a weapons system or build a telescope or an accelerator. It almost certainly will take longer. But maintaining the expertise to do that stuff is more important than whether you hit a target on a particular mission. So anyway, that's my little political lecture. I know no political lecture appeals to everyone, but I am concerned that we base our decisions on facts rather than on popular opinions. Not many popular opinions are fact-based. And a lot of the fact-based opinions are not popular. Hey, thank you all. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And thanks again for all the work you're doing down there. Hope I can see you in person someday.
Thank you, Tim. Much appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we'll turn it back over to Michelle.
Thank you. And very, very wonderful presentation. Thank you, Professor Ferris. We very much appreciate it. Let me get lights on back here where we are. Phil's getting them. Got it. Ooh.
Okay, Michelle.
Well, yes.
Michelle, you did ask about the October presentation. And
yes.
I've lined up the Back to Space group that's building a facility in Jacksboro. They're headquartered outside of Dallas. And I think we have the option of either doing them by Zoom or by in person. The folks said that they could come in person if we want to do that. So
I think it would. Yeah, I think that would be a great idea to get somebody here in person, get a little interaction.
Yeah, well, Dr. Ferris is in, or Professor Ferris,
Yeah,
California.
understood. But yeah, if
Yeah,
we do
so
have an option to get them here in person, I think that would be great.
So I will ask them if they can do it in person, and obviously if they can't for some reason, then we'll do it via Zoom. But
That sounds good.
I would like to add the shameless plug for Professor Ferris, for folks to check out his YouTube channel. He is publishing a lot of shorts on very interesting subjects. They're only 10 minutes long. He had quantum computing was one of them. And they're very watchable and very informative. So and that's my plug for Professor Ferris.
Thank you. All right, before we get started on the business portion of our meeting, let's do the raffle and see who's won what. We have a couple of people who do want to get raffle tickets. Come on up. It's one raffle ticket for $1. If you spend $3, you get 5 tickets. And while they're finishing up the raffle purchases over here, I wanted to put out there that we are still in need of a volunteer for our vice president's position. So keep that in mind. Qualification, you do have to have been a club member for at least 1 year. So if you've been a member for a year or longer, you can volunteer for that position and help us out and give Ed a break from gathering all of the presentations. And see, it would be a great time to volunteer because Ed's already got October taken care of. November's the swap meet, December's the party. So you've got it home free the first several months there. And it's going to be a few minutes while these people get their tickets. Anybody have any questions about anything we've discussed so far?
What is the raffle?
We have books. We have, I think, 5 different books up here, and you get your choice. What are you trying to do? Yes, question?
So when you to Texas.
Yes.
And went to join, but haven't been able to figure out how to do it online.
That's the man. He can help you with that. He's got it down to where there's like this QR code thing that I think you can take a picture of, and it gets you to the website to sign up. We had to become creative during the pandemic. Any other questions? And we're almost ready. Almost. Now, is that Matthew Nguyen back there? No. Okay. $3, 5 tickets. Yeah. Are those needing to go in here? Yeah. Okay. Start mixing them up. Matt, haven't you been collecting some books you could bring for a raffle? Oh, that's right. That's coming up in a couple of months. You've been saving them. Ah, so we can plan ahead of time. Okay. Let's see what we got in here. Okay, I'll call the last three numbers. Let's see if that gets us. 825. 825. Oh, Bill, okay. I'll try not to. Let's see. 802. 802. Who's the newbie? Very good. Okay, the next number, 821. I think that may be Bill again. No, not you? Oh, draw another one. Okay. 849. Ah, very good. Eight, 1, 5. Very good. I figured you'd get that one. Thank you. Okay, one more. Oh, it's probably the same one. 842. Is that you, Bill? No. Okay. 842. Oh, it's Monica. Very good. All right. Thank you for participating in the raffle, and it'll give you something to look forward to next month. Yay. Okay, now let's see what else we need to cover. Club equipment use. Neither John nor Zach is here tonight. Those are our two members, they're board members who have been working to get us to a point where we can get some loaner equipment out there. This all started with a question from one of our members about using equipment that comes from the dark side. We chose as a board, we voted and discussed, and we determined that what's in the dark sites really sort of needs to stay there so people can use it. And there, for those of you who aren't familiar, you have the telescopes, plus you have eyepieces in those locations. So if you don't have either of those, you can use those. Or if you have your own telescope and want to use those eyepieces, you can do that also. We do have some scopes that are in the Metroplex, sort of at people's homes in storage. And what we're going to do is they're drafting the paperwork to be able to use those scopes as loaner scopes. So the process will involve having a deposit, and the deposit amount will depend on what type of scope it is. And then once you return the scope, then a nominal fee of maybe $10 will be kept out of the deposit, and you'll get the rest of it back at the end of that loan. I believe we're looking at a loan period of like up to 60 days. And all of that will actually take place here in our meetings. So this is where we'll do the exchanging of picking up scopes and bringing scopes back and all of that. So there's going to be more to come on that.
And plus we'll have a set of eyepieces and filters that go with each of those as well. So
yeah,
we got 3 sets now. So I'm going to mark them, inventory them and everything tonight.
Okay, good.
So
do we have them in stock already? Did John order them already?
He's got him. I'm picking him up tonight.
All right. So yeah, we're getting good to go on that. So you'll have the scope, you'll have eyepieces, and we worked to get a very good set. It's got like 5 different eyepieces. It's got different colored filters. It's got, I believe, a moon filter in there. So it's going to be a good set of eyepieces to use for that for loaners. The treasurer's report, John. You've heard of it? I have not had a chance to open up what you sent. So would you like to share? Do you have it on flash drive? We'll just take it from you, what you say. You're always very good at that.
Okay, well, first, Michael, I just sent you an email that's got the handbook in it. Yeah. Speak into the mic. Is that better? Okay, eat the mic. I like it. Can I drop the mic? I want to know that part. Okay. We have money in a checking and a savings account. I want to mention one thing. Some of you may have noticed in the news that Wells Fargo is going through some issues with the federal government, and that's not a good thing to hear. So I'm starting to look around and see where else we can go besides them. The government seems to be very unhappy with them. So I'm thinking we might need to move. Our enrollment is at 154, which is where we were in November last year. So we've caught up with that 2 months early. For those who aren't familiar, we gallop along pretty heady. We got up to 182 last year. But come the renewal time, we typically lose a significant portion of people. Somewhere, I think 40 is what we lost last year, or this past summer anyway. Other items that are taking place, I wanted everybody to know we had issue. We did not. Night Sky Network had issues in early August for about 3 weeks period of time, off and on. So some people that sent in information to register, that information didn't get forwarded. Typically, I get an email message and the email message was not being sent. In addition to that, they were having issues just keeping the website up. So far in September, I haven't heard or seen any problems with that. We rely heavily on Night Sky Network. It's the membership database. We're currently going through some pains with PayPal. PayPal changed their charge rates on August the 1st, and it appeared that the new configuration of fee plus amount was worked out, but I noticed today that it's not. So I've talked to Sean about it, and we'll see what we have to do with that. There's also the issue with providing an IRS identification code to them. So they want to report the amount of money we're taking in through PayPal. And I think I did just send the message to Devitra.
Oh, yes.
And copied you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, when we got here, this door that we come in and have for years was still locked. They've had a miscommunication. So if something happens and this door is locked and you can't get through, there is another door on the other side of this wing that is supposed to be open for us. John is going to be working to get that changed. This evening, a very kind security guard got that changed for us when I explained it to him. So.
Yeah, I'll put a copy of the, in fact, it is already out there. I believe on eGroup's files directory, I think there is a copy of our confirmation summary,
Mhm.
and it contains the dates and time, 6:30 to 9:30.
Yep. And I'm sure it's just a miscommunication in their staffing.
Uh,
Things have changed in the last year and a half.
yeah. So I think, and does anybody have any questions other than I'll bring over the information for the couple down there.
Oh, did you tell us how much we had in our checking and savings account?
We have money, yes. We have over 70K.
Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, we've spoken about outreach. Remember, if you go to a star party, record that information in Night Sky Network. Because we do get credit for that. And then sometimes we win prizes, buttons and calendars and who knows what. Something that did come up at this past board meeting, the one we had last week, is we might want to look at more or additional or changing the location of our star parties. I think we'll be confirmed with Tandy Hill. Pam usually confirms with them in the next couple of months. But John Baker, one of our board members, did suggest a couple of locations. Do you have that PowerPoint to put up? Yeah. Bill's going to put up. I went out and scouted a couple of the locations he showed us. And I just sort of wanted to share that information as to what we're starting to look at. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to give them to the board so that we can get it. One of the areas is next to, I think it may be like the Trinity Trail out there. This is in River Oaks. And there's like a park where I think John sets up periodically so that you can set your telescopes up there in the grass. And he says he does have people who come off the trail to go ahead and look through the telescopes. It would be a situation in that area where it would be similar to Tandy Hills, where people would be parking on the street and we would get neighbors who come through. I do not know how much extra exposure we would get. If you go to the next one where we have the parking lot, a second location he suggested is the River Oaks Community Center. This might, if we can get it to work with them, be very ideal. And for those of you who used to work out at the museum, it would give us some of the conveniences we got used to out there. There's like a row over here on this side next to the grass where we could actually pull our vehicles in and you could work out of your trunks or off your tailgate and put your scopes up. And then the public could come park in the other areas and come over and look at the scopes. We'd be able to handle a little bit larger crowd. I think we might get a little bit more exposure from people who, are passing by. And John did say that they would also put that information out in some of their community newsletters, communications, emails. So again, if you wanted, we could even just use the grassy area that's out there to set up in. So we have some options. And again, I wanted to show you the pictures I took because you may think of other places where maybe you take your telescope and you have people who come and ask you to look through it and things like that, or you have a thought, maybe this would work. So think of those. And if you have a suggestion, let us know, because we will probably be looking at that over the next several months. So maybe come next spring when it gets to be a little bit more active, we will start maybe working out of one or two of these places just to see what happens so that we can see if we get a different crowd, get a larger crowd and things of that nature. Any questions on that? Any comments? Danny?
It would be different, but it would be a lot of fun. When I was with the Fort Worth Astronomical Society, we used to set up on the sidewalk outside. Oh, gee, it was a bar. Something saloon. Do y'all remember?
I don't know.
Okay.
But
anyway, it was a hoot. I mean, it was down there.
Outside of a saloon, I imagine so.
It was fun. But anyway, well, I never saw anybody.
Yeah.
But The sky is a little limited, so I would have to concede that.
Mhm.
It's just another option. But that option you showed with the parking lot, the grassy area, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I would love to see us start to show the night sky to more people.
And there's nothing that says we can't do multiple star parties throughout the month. Or have some people maybe at Tandy Hills, maybe some people want to do River Oaks. There's nothing that says we can't do that. So I think it's a good thing to keep our options open. Again, if you can think of another option for us to look at, let us know.
Hey, Pam, this is Chris Ashford. I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Do we ever do star parties at Thompson?
No, I
And-
don't. Thompson is a dark sky site and we reserve use of that to the club members.
Right, I understand. But I was thinking about like schools when they reach out and say, hey, I'd like to put something on for our physics club or whatever clubs they've got. And they could make a school trip out of it and we could host that. But going out to the dark side, you'd see an awful lot more. I think the kids would be more inspired if they could actually see a few thousand stars rather than 52, whatever you can see from your backyard.
Right. I hear what you're saying and I understand it. Again, then you get into the distance of travel to get to a site like that. Now, I will say in the past, when we've had star parties at Palo Pinto, over in Strawn, which is almost to Ranger, some of the people I had met out there were actually from the Metroplex who went out there on a Saturday evening. I don't know how many families necessarily we got, but we did have some people who were coming in some distance to do that type of viewing.
Well, I mean, kids travel all over the place, UIL contests, football matches, you name it, they're out there. So traveling isn't that big a problem. They just get a school bus, so they have to have a driver. One of the teachers can do it. Maybe. Again, that just a thought, that's all.
No, that's a thought and it's a good one. And it might be something that we would need to coordinate with Thompson. Again, not going to be able to do that until they lift their numbers restrictions. And I don't know when that will be, but
Well,
right now
yeah,
they are limiting to 12 people maximum in a group. So,
yeah, no, I understand that. Hopefully that will end at some point.
which leads to the next topic on the list is the club picnic. We were hoping that we could host a club picnic at Thompson's this fall. And unfortunately, because of their restrictions, that's not going to work. So we're just going to have to hope for next spring that we can get a good gathering out there at Thompson and have a good club picnic and enjoy some fellowship out there. But the good news is we do get to have a Christmas party. Robin has reserved us the room at Spring Creek Barbecue where we've held the party the last several years. It works out well because it's just big enough to hold our group. You can go through the line, you get your meal, whatever you want, and then you go in and you enjoy, and we do a white elephant exchange. So it's always a good fun time. The date for that this year is December the 11th. And as it gets closer, we'll get that information to you, but that's at the Spring Creek. It's off of 183 in Bedford. So it's real easy to get to. Yes. I don't remember if it's on Central or not. I just remember it's off of 183. So if it's off of 183, that's the only one I'm aware of. Yeah. December the 11th. And then again, as mentioned earlier, in November, we have our swap meet, which is always fun, always good. You can always pick up bargains. You can sell some of your stuff. I see a question back. Did you have a question? Oh, no. Okay. Any questions on the swap meet and some of our new members? Yes. It's the third Tuesday in November. I don't have that date in front of me. Bill, have you got a calendar up? The third Tuesday in November. The 16th, November 16th. Thank you very much. Okay, I have a note on Amazon Smile. For those of you who are Amazon users, you purchase from Amazon. If you're not aware, you can actually sign up so that a portion of your purchase gets donated to the Fort Worth Astronomical Society. So if you're a good heavy Amazon user, help us out and donate through Amazon. How much do we usually get per year? Do you have a? Okay, so it's not like a ton of money, but every little bit helps. So. Mhm. Correct. And speaking of the fact that Amazon does that for us and makes that donation, we get, is it yearly? We usually get a donation from Verizon. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think he got that taken care of through work, some sort of a program he has. If you have a work situation where they may make a donation to an organization for whatever, or a matching donation, look into it and see if that'll help us out, because I think that's where the Verizon comes from, is the location where he works. They have a program that does that. We have already talked about Cafe Press. And then George Lutch, has he been on Zoom? Is he there now? George Lutch, did you want to talk about Prime Focus if you're there? I guess he's checked out early. Okay. We do have Prime Focus. Again, for you new members, you'll see an email that comes out once a month. George Lutz takes care of putting together a Prime Focus newsletter. It's got all sorts of wonderful information in it. Sometimes Matt does a book review in there for it. And so you'll usually see that email come out, and he'll tell you where the link is to get to it on the iOS website, correct? Nope, it goes through FWAS. It goes through the Astronomical Club website, the club website. So look for that link and check that out. And then once you get there, you can check out past issues. Okay, any questions for me, for board members? Do any of our board members have anything else you want to bring up to the club in general? Now you've already had your, anybody
I have a
else?
question, Michelle.
Yes.
Yeah, just a reminder that the vice president position is still vacant.
Mm-hmm.
I've got next month's presentation, and that's going to be probably it for me, except for maybe January we might do the showcase of images from the club, if that's acceptable. But at some point we need to get a vice president and a programs person.
Okay, we will get that taken care of so we can give you a rest and let you go do some more observing. You have gotten us some excellent programs, so we do appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions from Zoom or in the room? All right, we will call it an evening and give you a chance to visit. We've still got the room for another 30 minutes if you want to visit amongst yourselves or have a personal question for me or one of the other board members. Okay, and thank you, Bill, for helping us with all the technology.